you. There's more than that in my thoughts, dear. It's because you are you, yourself, that I've longed for you through the aching hours of the night, that I've sat and written like a man beside himself just for the joy of thinking that the words I wrote would be spoken by you. Oh, if you want me to tell you what I feel—" She suddenly leaned forward, took his head between her hands, and kissed his forehead. "Now get back, please, to your chair," she begged. "You've stilled the horrible, miserable little doubt that was tearing at my heartstrings. I just had it before, once or twice, and then isn't it foolish, your telling me about this little typewriter girl? I must go and see her. We must be kind to her." He resumed his seat with a little sigh. "She thought a great deal more of me and my work when I told her that you were probably going to act in my play." Her expression changed. She was more serious, at the same time more eager. "Ah, the play!" she exclaimed. "I can see that you have brought some of it." He drew the roll of manuscript from his pocket. "Shall I read it?" he suggested. She almost snatched it away. "No! I can't wait for that. Give it to me quickly." She leaned forward so that the firelight fell upon the pages. Little strands of soft brown hair drooped over her face. In studying her, Philip almost forgot his own anxiety. He had known so few women, yet he had watched so many from afar off, endowed them with their natural qualities, built up their lives and tastes for them, and found them all so sadly wanting. To him, Elizabeth represented everything that was desirable in her sex, from the flowing lines of her beautiful body to the sympathy which seemed to be always shining out of her eyes. Notwithstanding her strength, she was so exquisitely and entirely feminine, a creature of silk and laces, free from any effort of provocativeness, yet subtly, almost clamorously human. He forgot in those few moments that she had become the arbitress of his material fate, that he was a humble author, watching the effect of his first attempts upon a mistress in her profession. He remembered only that she was the woman who was filling his life, stealing into every corner of it, permeating him with love, pointing him onward towards a life indescribable, unrealizable. She swung suddenly towards him. There was a certain amount of enthusiasm in her face, but even more marked was her relief. "Oh, I am so glad!" she cried. "You know I have had qualms. When you told me the story in your own words, picking your language so carefully and building it all up before me, well, you know what I said. I gave you more than hope. I promised you success. And then, when I got away into the hard, stagey world of Chicago, and my manager talked business to me, and my last playwright preached of technique, I began to wonder whether, after all, you could bring your ideas together like this, whether you would have a sense of perspective. You know what I mean, don't you? And you have it, and the play is going to be wonderful, and I shall produce it. Why don't you look pleased, Mr. Author? You are going to be famous." He smiled. "I don't care about fame," he said. "And for the rest, I think I knew." "Conceited!" she exclaimed. "It wasn't that," he protested. "It was simply when I sat down in that little room high up over the roofs and buildings of a strange city, shut myself in and told myself that it was for you, well, the thoughts came too easily. They tumbled over one another. And when I looked away from my work, I saw the people moving around me, and I knew that I had made my dreams real. And that's the great thing, isn't it, Elizabeth?" "Well?" "I am lonely in that little room." "You lonely? Taking out typewriters to dine?" she mocked tenderly. "It is lonely," he repeated, and I am afraid of you here in all this luxury. I am so far away. I come from my attic to this, and I am afraid. Do you know why?" She sat quite still for a moment. Dimly she felt the presage of a coming change in their relationship. Up to now she had been the mistress. She had held him so easily in check with her practised skill, with an unfinished sentence, a look, a touch. And now the man was rising up in him, and she felt her powers weaken. "Shall I change my abode?" she murmured. "Ah, but you would be just as wonderful and as far away even if we changed places. If you sat in my attic and I took your place here, that isn't why I torture myself, why I'm always asking myself if you are real, if the things we talk about are real, if the things we feel belong to ourselves, well up from our own hearts, for one another, or just the secondary emotions of other people we catch up without knowing why. This is foolish, but you understand. You do understand. It is because you keep me so far away from yourself. When my fingers are burning for yours, when even to touch your face, to feel your cheek against mine, would banish every fear I have ever had. Elizabeth, you do understand. I have never kissed you. I have never held you for one moment in my arms. And I love you." He was leaning over her chair and she held him tightly by the shoulders. There was nothing left of that hidden fear in his dark eyes. They shone now with another light, and she began to tremble. "I wanted to wait a little, Philip, but if you feel like that, well, I can't." He took her silently into his arms. With the half closing of her eyes, the first touch of her responsive lips, himself dimly conscious of the change, he passed into the world where stronger men live. End of Book 2, Chapter 5.